Greetings and welcome to Arrows in All Directions, Time, Entropy, and the Growth of Cosmic Information. Well, let's get started on this, and greetings to everyone. Just to let you know that we do have the talking chat enabled, so if you type something into the chat, it should be able to read it back right away.
The tribe says, hit the like.
Indeed, so that way we can stay interactive here and make sure we leave no concept behind. Any questions, clarifications, or comments, feel free to pipe up in the chat. All right, well, let's get started here with Eddington's Arrow of Time. Sir Arthur Eddington coined the term, or coined the Arrow of Time name, to name a physical distinction between past and future that exist independent of consciousness. Wow, so there's a physical distinction between past and future that has nothing to do with consciousness. So the distinction rests on entropy. Energy transforms from orderly to less orderly forms as time passes. Earlier moments contain more organized energy than later ones. Interesting. So as time goes on, things become less orderly until, I guess, the future where everything is random, right? No appeal to our sense of time's passage is needed. The difference between now and then is entirely a matter of how energy is organized. So entropy would be that lack of organization here. And the key principles is that time moves forward regardless of whether humans observe it. Space has no such preferred direction. Now, a reversed arrow, meaning instead of going the arrow of time here between past and future, if it was reversed going from future to past, it would resemble a movie run backward. Not impossible under classical mechanics, but patently absurd. So entropy cannot spontaneously decrease without violating the second law of thermodynamics, which is what makes the arrow irreversible. So we're looking at the energy as it's being moving to a higher entropy state, that's a loss. This is a one-way flow from greater to lesser organization, and it ensures that the world makes sense. So as we see here, as we're looking at information as energy, that entropy, when it's starting with more order as time goes forward in one direction from past to future, we see from greater organization to less organization. And that ensures the world makes sense. Interesting concepts. Let's start to dig down a little bit deeper. Look at the central paradox.
MTBC1 we says we are in time that flows in one direction. Everything has a beginning and end.
Yes, time is flowing in one direction. And I guess with a beginning, the end is probably indeterminate, right? It's an arrow, so it's pointing in a direction. The end may or may be around the corner. But tomorrow is promised to no one. Let's proceed. Let's look at entropy's prediction. If time's arrow follows increasing randomness, so we're going from higher order to lesser order over time. So we know the past was more order, and as time goes by, it's less order. It destroys information. The universe should grow steadily more disordered. That's the prediction of entropy. And it becomes a paradox because that means that the universe is just destroying itself. At some point would come to an end. As the being implied here in the chat. But the concept here in reality is that history chronicles novelty, not decay. And as we learned here, the novelty is a result that comes out from a lack of entropy. When there's more order, from a higher entropy, when there's a lot of order, you don't get as much novelty. So the novelty will emerge from higher entropy. So as time goes forward, then we'll see more novelty. So history chronicles the novelty, not the decay. So the decay is almost like a constant following a law of thermodynamics. There's new structures, new organisms, new civilizations, and new ideas. Information grows rather than diminishes over time. So that's one of the ways that to combat the destruction of order is that information grows because of history's reality. But let's dig deeper. There's a second paradox. There's a microscopic reversibility. The fundamental processes of physics are nearly time symmetric. A backward running movie violates no microscopic law. So individual particles moving one way or another in the movie, that could happen. But once you bring into the macro, the larger context, it becomes absurd. So the reversal breaches only the statistical assumptions derived from the entropy principle, not the underlying laws of nature. So the reversal is not violating the laws of nature. When you see a movie in reverse, the cars are driving backwards. It's not violating a law of nature, right? But the statistical assumption that why would so many cars be driving in reverse, right? So let's move along. Look at I guess I'm not sure I'm saying this right, but I'd like to say it lasers 3 arrows of time. It's pretty fitting for a straight arrow, a name like laser. David Laser, a Harvard astronomer, resolves both paradoxes, or would that be paradoxes, by proposing 3 distinct arrows of time. So let's look at these 3 distinct arrows as we have implied in our thumbnail there. We have a cosmic expansion. This arrow points away from the universe's initial state, infinitely condensed and uniform, tracking the outward expansion from the primordial singularity. So at the beginning, it was infinitely condensed and uniform, very orderly, right? Then we have the outward expansion from the primordial singularity. That begins our arrow of history. This arrow traces the emergence of galaxies, stars, planets, and life, civilization, and mind. The full arc of increasing complexity and novelty. So, the novelty that comes out of that expansion of entropy or disorder is the novelty. And that adds to the order because now it's a new direction of order in the arrow of history. So remember, the history is a chronicle of these novelties that emerge. But then we have the thermodynamic arrow. This arrow marks increasing entropy, increasing state of disorder, generated as macroscopic structures unravel and organized energy dissipates into less ordered forms. So at the macroscopic level, yeah, there might have been buildings of brick. Once the buildings are knocked down, you still have bricks. So the micro is still the same, but the order of those bricks being stacked into buildings is gone, the macroscopic structures. A universe born without information. So let's look at Laser's reinterpretation of the Big Bang. So Laser's arrow of history irreversibly points toward increasing complexity and information. He rejects the common view that the universe began in disequilibrium and is winding down toward maximum entropy. Instead, the universe at birth needed no structure at all. If the Big Bang theory is correct, the cosmos started devoid of information at every scale, microscopic and macroscopic alike. Uniform disorder prevailed. Wow, what a concept. Uniform disorder. I think that could be applied in many circumstances beyond the universe. But I digress. And there's uniformed disorder and uninformed disorder. All right. Information. It's the measure of non-uniform orderly properties. So information. It's the measure of non-uniform orderly properties. Evolved out of that initial state of perfect confusion. The universe did not lose order. It generated order from nothing. Wow, what a concept here now. So the order was never part of this primordial structure. There was no structure at all. An order was generated from nothing. But now that brings us to how do you get nothing from nothing? So let's look at the cosmic expansion, how it breaks the equilibrium. Here's how it outpaced disorder, how the expansion was needed.
E5E says going deep here.
Oh yeah, we're going real deep tonight. Too much dry stuff, but stay tuned because we will have a special treat at the end of this presentation. So for those of you here, be sure to stay to the end and you'll be pleasantly surprised. All right, let's look at the cosmic expansion, how it breaks the equilibrium. So this is how expansion outpaced disorder. While randomizing collisions were faster than expansion, equilibrium held and no structures could form. This lasted only a fraction of a microsecond. Once expansion outpaced the forces of disorder, chemical equilibrium broke and particle distributions became unequal. Wow. So the expansion outpaced the forces of disorder. And that's how the particle distributions became unequal, which outpaces disorder. So here's the critical shift. Here it happens. This is it right here. The expansion speed was not constant. Once it exceeded the collision rate, the rate it's being destroyed, encounters between particles grew too infrequent to maintain equal distribution. The chemical composition of the universe shifted from equilibrium to disequilibrium, a change with momentous consequences for everything that followed. Momentous. So this moment caused everything that followed here regarding this pace of expansion, breaking the equilibrium. So this is how the equilibrium keeps burning at whatever rate you can expand, destroying itself, going back to disorder. But once this expansion outpaced that, there was new assemblies. Again, the how is it phrased before here? We had a lot of great phrases here that really were great here.
Bill Thimmeth 4426 says, as water loses heat it can form many unique orderly snowflakes. Is entropy increasing or decreasing in this case?
It can form. So yeah. So you're if I remember correctly, when you're getting to the cooler temperature, you're decreasing entropy. So that would be why the crystal structures can form. But I want to get back to some of these statements here because this is a pretty good, I guess, 2 slides back, wasn't it? Yes, this is it here. So the macroscopic structures being unraveled and organized energy dissipates into less ordered forms as at one side, but the expansion side is what we're looking at. It infinitely is condensed and uniform, but the outward expansion, right? It's the, oh geez, it's not on this slide either. Must have been on this one. All right, I'm not going to take much more time here. Some really good statements along the way here. Of course, you can always watch a replay. That's what YouTube's all about. Let's move along here. So the critical shift here, we see here, the change with momentous consequences for everything that follows. And what follows is, this slide, come on. There we go. From disequilibrium to stars in life. All right, here's where it all comes together. For those of you that are able to stick it out with me here, we have the coal fire analogy. This helps really illustrate better. Had the expansion, think about from the initial Big Bang, had the expansion been slower, all matter would have become pure ash, like a fire consuming every scrap of fuel. But because equilibrium could not keep pace, the universe retained unburned fuel, enabling long-burning stars and ultimately life. So by keeping the destruction slower, the burning, right, the expansion happened so fast that the equilibrium, it couldn't reach balance fast enough. And in doing so, we started to see the coalescing of different forms of order. But the expansion created conditions for two order generating processes: cosmic evolution and biological evolution. Both move irreversibly from uniformity toward new structures and greater complexity. So, when we're talking about biological evolution here, we're speaking strictly about the observable biological evolution that you can see, especially in microbes, and the way organisms can adapt to their environment. So, this isn't in religious or any of that kind of context what we're speaking about here, but the expansion and the conditions created for order generating processes. They're complementary and not conflicting. The arrows of history and thermodynamics are complementary. The entropy arises naturally from the same processes that produce living systems and civilization. Think about this. The entropy, the burning of the fuel, right? Going from something very orderly like the log into something very indiscriminate like the ash. We burn energy throughout life, but to keep things going, there's always supposed to be contributing more by generating a new form of order instead of just random ash, so to speak. Laser challenges the view that entropy growth is necessary while order growth is accidental. Both follow from events at the first instant after the Big Bang. So once the expansion outpaced the equilibrium, all bets were off. All right, now we're on to entropy as missing information. Then we get to Boltzmann's insight here. Entropy is missing information as Boltzmann observed over a century ago. The question is, where does that information go? In closed systems, information is lost at the macroscopic scale and is converted into information at the microscopic scale in a closed system. What vanishes from the big picture reappears in fine details. So, fine details about events, but once they're not assembled in the right order, they're just fine details. In principle, total information remains constant. This is in principle. What looks uniform on a large scale may be highly non-uniform on a small scale. In reality, mixing processes in the universe destroy this microscopic information through random buffeting by stray particles and outside forces. Entropy rises and information vanishes. So the mixing processes in the universe destroy the microscopic information. Those entropy rises and the information vanishes. So it's missing information from the macroscopic level because of random buffeting by stray particles and outside forces of the microscopic level. This is the encroachment, so to speak. By taking away fine parts of a mosaic, you could no longer see what the big picture was, perhaps. So, although it could be by random buffeting, it could be either by stray particles or by outside forces. And we know with outside forces, even though the randomness is a very vague term, through statistical application of number crunching, that randomness can be quite significantly reduced to be relative certainty by outside forces. So think about this as far as the larger picture, how it can be destroyed by just taking away certain fine details, which might seem like random buffeting by stray particles, but could also be by outside forces, in which case entropy rises and information vanishes. So let's look at the playing card analogy here. A deck's organized by suit.
Bill Thimmeth 4426 says, Boltzmann has his own constant that can be used to convert temperature to energy.
Yes, indeed. That's right. I forgot about the constant. Okay. We're getting real deep tonight, aren't we, here, Bill? Let's move along. Thanks for the insight. Let's get to the playing card analogy here. A deck is organized by suit, each suit internally shuffled. A player cannot locate the ace of hearts exactly, but knows it lies in the top quarter because it's organized by suit. This is macroscopic information, large-scale structural knowledge. Now let's divide the deck. Now the deck is divided into 4 stacks. So now let's cut in half repeatedly until all 52 cards lie face down. Macroscopic information about the pack has entirely vanished now. We've divided that thing repeatedly. Only microscopic information remains. The identity of each individual card is recoverable only by turning them over one by one. That's that brute force. Large-scale order has dissolved into small-scale detail, just as macroscopic information decays into microscopic information in physical systems. Just as our bodies eventually become something that's food for bacteria, I guess that would be true. Now let's look at Maxwell's demon and closed systems. Another one we get constants from here, Maxwell's, right?
Craig Curry G5E says no worries about dancing around the slides. You are onto something here, tribe.
All right, well, thank you. All right. So on Maxwell's demon and closed systems, now we're looking at gas systems. That's why I'm trying to think. It's Maxwell's constants here and the gas laws. All right, I digress. Maxwell's demon is an ideal being who tracks every molecule in a sealed gas vessel. He succeeds only because he inhabits a perfectly closed system, shielded from all outside influence. Yeah, the perfect gas laws. So no such system exists in reality, though. Moving a single gram of matter near the star Sirius by 1 centimeter would measurably alter a gas's microscopic state on Earth within a fraction of a second. Wow. A real scientist would need to know every influence on the chamber, then every influence on those influences, expanding outward until the inquiry encompassed every particle and force in the universe. Let's talk about splitting hairs. So let's look at some of these key insights. The demon, this is Maxwell's demon, this is an ideal being, the ideal gas laws. Only in the fiction of perfect isolation, which has no counterpart in the physical world. Even the most remote matter exerts measurable influence on local microscopic states. That's amazing here that the most remote matter exerts measurable influence. Whether we can measure it or not, it's only a matter of time, right? So complete knowledge of any system demands complete knowledge of the entire universe. And the cascading requirement makes perfect information fundamentally unattainable. Wow. So it's only an approximation. Then we get Laplace's demon and universal knowledge. So Laplace, I don't know how to say his name's vision here. He imagined a cosmic intellect that could know everything about every particle in the universe, and thereby predict all of history. Nothing would be uncertain, and the future as the past could be present to its eyes. And here's Laser's radical conclusion. He said that even a Pelican superintelligence could not obtain total information about the universe at the molecular scale. This is not merely a consequence of quantum uncertainty. And we talk about quantum uncertainty, we're talking about being able to numerically give a value to where a particle will be at any point in time. It stems from irremovable restrictions on what could be specified about the universe, rooted in a cosmic symmetry principle central to Laser's theory. So the universe possesses properties that set it fundamentally apart from any local system it contains, making comprehensive, microscopic description inherently impossible. Wow. Talk about micromanaging being a ridiculous endeavor indeed. It makes comprehensive microscopic description inherently impossible. Let's look at this cosmological principle. Here's the unique properties of the universe. It's a bound, finite system can be fully described with finite information. The universe cannot, because it has properties no local system shares. So the universe is assumed to be unbounded, though whether it is finite or infinite remains an open question. Now it obeys the cosmological principle. It looks statistically the same from any vantage point, and no observer can occupy a privileged position. Wow. So the cosmological principle, it's almost like that holographic effect. Any vantage point is statistically the same. The same galaxy patterns recur throughout the cosmos. The consequence is microscopic information about the universe as a whole simply does not exist. It can be neither specified nor acquired. This indeterminacy rules out complete knowledge on any scale, finer than the macroscopic. This brings us right back to the AI and information theory. No detail of inner structure can be added to a general description. All meaningful cosmic properties are therefore statistical, describing great collections of particles rather than individual ones. So the lines of discernment around collections of particles, not the particles themselves. A universe that generates its own novelty. Remember, the novelty is a chronicle of history. History is a chronicle of novelty. The universe generates novelty as it goes along. It is law-like, but unpredictable, always containing more information than it did before. We could say this is generative under rules, huh? In Laplace's deterministic world, this is where you had the demon that could be knowing where every particle was in the universe, in the past, present, and future. Past and future coexist on equal terms, like two rays extending from a single point on a line. Nothing corresponds to the passage of time. Laser concludes that not even the universe itself, the ultimate computer, contains enough information to fully specify its own future states. And as we say here, computer is this text was from, I believe, the 80s. So this is then the term computer could also be used for someone that computes, that does the math problems and such. Every present moment holds genuine novelty. So every present moment holds genuine novelty. And the future is never wholly predictable. Because biological processes generate information, and consciousness lets us experience them. Our intuition that the world unfolds in time reflects one of the universe's deepest properties. Wow. So it's an intuition that we see how the world unfolds. Yet these are processes here that are reflecting the universe's deepest properties. Interesting here to really think about and to contemplate. Let's move along. So let's look at the summary of some of these key themes we went over. We went over quite a bit. We started with Eddington's arrow of time defines a physical distinction between past and future based on entropy alone, not consciousness. Then we have how history contradicts entropy's prediction by recording increasing order, information, and of course, novelty. So, although we see the distinction from past and future, meaning we're going from a state of lower entropy to higher entropy, we see history contradicting it. by going into a lower entropy with increasing order. Then Laser resolves this with 3 arrows. Okay, he has cosmic expansion, history, and thermodynamics. Remember, to break the equilibrium, we have a rate of expansion that exceeds the equilibrium. The universe began with 0 information. Expansion outpaced equilibrium and created conditions for stars, life, and complexity. Entropy and order are complementary products of the same cosmic event, not opposing forces. And the cosmological principle makes complete microscopic knowledge of the universe impossible for any intelligence, artificial or not. And the universe generates genuine novelty at every moment and can never fully predict its own future. Well, that takes us down to the best part of all, and which we can't predict yet, is
Filthiness 4426 says, I recommend The Character of Physical Law by Richard Feynman, Chapter 5 for a great explanation of these ideas.
nice. Not the biggest fan of Feynman, but yeah, he's a character for sure. Nonetheless, but I digress. Let's get on to the first question here. Question 1. What makes time fundamentally different from space? Before we get started here, I just want to remind you here that to play this game here, we put in the chat the number of the question you're picking and then the letter of the choice. So if question 1 I was going to pick letter D, I would put in the chat Arabic number 1.
Curry G5E says lots of food here to shut down and ponder thoughts for hours.
Indeed, and that was kind of the intent of this. It was a pretty brief topic, but it really goes deep. So yeah, thanks for that. And definitely these questions should help ponder some thoughts. So let's look into here. Once again, let me just give the quick instructions in the chat. Put the number, Arabic number of the question, followed by the letter D if I was choosing D, delta, and that would be my choice. If I decided I wanted to change it, I would just put the same number of the question again, followed by change of choice, and that last answer will be considered my final answer. We'll tally up when we're done. Let's get started. So, question 1. What makes time fundamentally different from space, according to the entropy principle? A. Time has 3 dimensions while space has only 1. B. Time moves in a preferred direction while space has no preferred direction. C. Time can be measured precisely while space cannot. Or D. Time exists only when conscious beings are present to observe it. Now, if anyone is well versed in the trivium, this should be the quadrivium. This would be a very easy one. But once again, time has 3 dimensions.
Filthiness 4426 says 1B.
Okay, we have an answer 1B. Anyone else wants to pipe up on question 1? Question 1 going once, going twice. On to question 2. So we're on to question 2 now. The early universe was in a state of uniform disorder. Early. What broke the equilibrium and allowed structures to form? So we had uniform disorder. So it's uniform, all the same disorder. But what broke and allowed more ordered structures to form out of that uniform disorder? A. Gravity pulled particles together before they could collide and randomize. B. Quantum fluctuations created spontaneous pockets of order from nothing. C. Cosmic expansion outpaced randomizing collisions that had maintained equilibrium. Or D. Dark energy injected new information into the primordial plasma. Okay, so question 2. We got 4 answers. Gravity pulling particles together before they could collide.
Filthiness 4426 says 2C.
All right, we have anyone else have a suggestion here for question 2? Want to pipe up with an answer? We have one for C. All right, question 2, going once, going twice, going 3 times. We're on to question 3. All right, in our playing card analogy, Were you there for the playing card analogy? We had shuffled the deck, but only by suit. What happens to the information when the ordered deck is spread into 52 face down cards? A. All information is permanently destroyed. B. Total information increases because each card is now an independent unit. C. Macroscopic information vanishes, but microscopic information about individual cards remains. Or D. The information is transferred to the table surface. All right, so question 3. Back to that playing card analogy. We shuffled it, cut the deck until it's cut down.
Bill 4426 says 3C.
All right, we have a C. Anyone else wants to pipe up for question 3? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Thanks for playing here, Bill. Let's go on to question 4. Why are the arrow of history and the thermodynamic arrow described as complementary rather than conflicting? A. They point in opposite directions and cancel each other out over cosmic time. B. The arrow of history is an illusion created by human consciousness.
Craig Curry G5E says, yep, I go 3C.
Okay, so you're going 3C too? All right, so we get 2 for 3, 2 for 3 on C. All right, so here for question 4. Why are the arrow of history and thermodynamic arrow described as complementary rather than conflicting? So we had A, they point opposite directions and cancel each other out over cosmic time. B, the arrow of history is an illusion created by human consciousness, not a real physical process. Or C, both arise from the same initial conditions after the Big Bang, with entropy produced by the very processes that generate order. Or D, thermodynamic arrow applies only to machines, while the arrow of history applies only to living things. All right, question 4 should be pretty simple. Arrow of history and thermodynamic arrow are described, we saw here, complementary rather than conflicting, even though
Bill 4426 says 4C.
All right, so we get another one for 4C. Both arise from the same initial conditions after the Big Bang, with entropy produced by the very processes that generated order. All right, interesting paradox, but let's move along and see how we did. All right, so for the answer key, starting with question 1, what makes time fundamentally different from space? The correct answer is B. Time moves in preferred directions and space does not. So entropy gives time a one-way arrow, always from greater to lesser organization, while space has no such asymmetry. So entropy gives time a one-way arrow. So I think Bill would get that one right, indeed. Let's move along. Question 2, what broke equilibrium in the early universe? And of course the answer was C. The expansion outpaced the randomizing collisions. So once expansion exceeded the collision rate, particles could no longer maintain equal distribution, and structures became possible. So yep, oops, gotta get that one off the screen. There we go. Indeed, all right, another one correct. Let's move on. Question 3, what happens to information when the card deck is spread face down? And indeed, we have a 3C here also. The macro information vanishes. The micro information about individual cards remains. Because of large-scale structural knowledge, when we had the deck assembled by suits in the 4 stacks, essentially, it dissolves into a small-scale detail once it's been shuffled all the way down that must be recovered card by card. And finally, question 4. Why are the history and thermodynamic arrows complementary rather than conflicting here? Well, both arise from the same initial conditions after the Big Bang. Correct answer was C. So yes, excellent. Bill Thomas got that right too. So the order and entropy are twin products of the same cosmic event. Neither is more fundamental or accidental than the other.
Bill Thimis 4426 says, Chapter 5 is called The Distinction of Past and Future. I. Feynman's book.
I have to check it out in his books. I might be able to tolerate it a little better than his character. He gets some things wrong, like magnetism. He definitely, I kind of, it's hard for me to listen to him after seeing how he tries to squirm out of explaining magnetism. But that I digress. Nonetheless, he's definitely in a more illustrious position than me. But I do thank all of you for being out here on the YouTube channel here to share in this one here to explore the time, entropy, and the growth of cosmic
Bill
information.
Thimis 4426 says, Indeed, he is not right about everything.
Yeah. It's just when he was wrong, it's very telling. But nonetheless, I digress. There are some other, I guess, other scientists out there that have had a little bit more impact, I could say, over time. And although he did bring into Feynman did bring it into more of a.
Craig Curry G5E says, what a thought-provoking presentation.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you all for showing up here and participating. This is definitely something that actually is part of the whole package that we're going over here with logic and artificial intelligence, and to see how this all comes into play, and of course with the intersection with the law and jurisprudence too, because the way all of these ordered structures have come about come from states of disorder, and of course the whole process here of destruction and generation and rate of expansion initially setting this thing off where there's more fuel than can be burned. It sets off some interesting dynamics in so many different venues that it really applies throughout all of existence and actually all of the universe beyond time. So with that and arrows in all directions, I thank you all for being here, and I hope to see you all on the next one. Peace out.
Bill Thimis 4426 says, thanks for the fascinating presentation. Bill Thimis 4426 says, take care all. The tribe says, Bill gets the